You've seen the charts, you've heard the advice. Logically, you understand that money sitting in a savings account is slowly losing its power. Yet, when it comes time to actually invest, something deeper pulls you back. That button to confirm a trade, the screen asking for your initial deposit, it doesn't feel like a step forward. It feels like stepping off a ledge. For many, this isn't about a lack of knowledge. It's about a visceral emotional reaction. Investing doesn't feel like a rational choice. It feels like an exposure. You're taking something solid, something you worked for, and placing it into a system defined by uncertainty. That number in your bank account isn't just currency, it's a measure of safety. It's proof of stability. To move it is to risk that hard-won peace of mind. Think of the person who has spent years reading books, watching tutorials, and comparing brokerages. They can explain compound interest and asset allocation, but they remain perpetually in the learning phase. The goalpost for knowing enough keeps moving, because the real barrier isn't information, it's the transition from theory to action. That final click isn't a technical step, it's an emotional leap, and in that moment, all the old adages ring true. Better safe than sorry isn't a cliché, it feels like a profound truth written into your nervous system. This channel explores the hidden landscapes of decision-making, and if this tension between knowing and doing feels familiar, you're not alone. I'd be curious to hear in the comments if you've ever been in that eternal research loop yourself. The fear often has roots that run deeper than the present moment. It can be shaped by a past where financial security was fragile. Maybe you grew up hearing whispered conversations about debt, or experienced a sudden loss that made the world feel unpredictable. In that context, money isn't just a tool for growth. It's a shield, a buffer against chaos. Keeping it perfectly still, even if it's eroding, feels like maintaining that protective barrier. The known cost of inflation feels less threatening than the unknown specter of a market dip. So, we create a paradox. We know inactivity has a price. We can even calculate it. But that price feels abstract, a distant statistical ghost. The potential loss from investing, however, feels immediate and vivid. It plays out in our minds like a movie, watching the balance fall, feeling the knot in your stomach, facing the regret. The mind's job is to protect us, and it excels at magnifying potential threats. So it convinces us that the greatest risk is action itself. The result is a quiet life philosophy that masquerades as prudence. I'd rather earn little than risk losing what I already have. The money sits, the statements arrive, and there's a peculiar, counterintuitive peace in seeing that static number. It's a peace that comes from control, or at least the illusion of it. Because in a world of flux, an unchanged balance feels like a territory you've successfully defended, even if that defense is costing you the war for your future. What exactly are we afraid of? It's rarely the simple fear of losing money. That's the surface. Dig deeper, and you find a more complex emotional anatomy. For many, the core fear is regret. The unbearable thought of making a conscious choice, a move you researched and authorized, only to see it fail. It's one thing to lose money to inflation, a silent, passive force. It's another to actively participate in your own perceived mistake. That kind of regret isn't just financial. It feels like a personal failing, a confirmation of every hidden doubt. I knew I shouldn't have. I'm not cut out for this. This is why the person who freezes at the moment of clicking isn't being irrational. They are trying to avoid a future emotional wound. The potential gain of investing is abstract, a comfortable retirement, financial freedom. But the potential pain of regret is concrete and visceral. The mind's protective mechanism kicks in, prioritizing the avoidance of that sharp, specific pain over the pursuit of a fuzzy, distant reward. It's a powerful, self-preserving instinct. Then there's the fear of lost control. Your bank account is a closed loop. You put money in, you take money out. You are the sole actor. The moment you invest, you introduce other players, markets, CEOs, geopolitical events, the irrational moods of millions of other investors. You are no longer in command. You are a participant in a vast, chaotic system. For someone whose sense of security is tied to control, this feels like surrender. It's handing over your carefully built fortress to forces you cannot predict or manage. The anxiety isn't about the money fluctuating, it's about your agency diminishing. We see this in the endless comparison of options, checking one more review, analyzing one more graph. It feels like diligence, but often, it's a ritual of control. As long as you're researching, you're still in charge. You haven't yet released your grip. Action means accepting that you've done what you can, and now you must let go. That transition from total control to partial influence is a psychological chasm. And beneath it all often lies a mindset shaped by scarcity. Not necessarily current poverty, but a deep-seated memory or belief that resources are finite and perilously easy to lose. In a scarcity mindset, every dollar is a seed that must not be wasted. Loss is not an acceptable part of a process. It is a catastrophic subtraction from a limited whole. So, the bird in the hand isn't just a bird, it's your only bird. The two in the bush aren't a potential gain, they're a dangerous distraction that could cause you to drop the one you're holding. This creates a powerful emotional logic where preservation isn't a strategy, but a moral imperative. Spending feels risky. Investing feels reckless. Only accumulation and storage feel truly safe. The money must be kept still, visible, and untouched. Its growth is secondary to its existence. The emotional payoff is immediate. A sigh of relief when you log in and see it, unchanged, exactly where you left it. The cost, the slow fade of its value, is a quiet, acceptable trade for that daily reassurance. The fear, then, isn't of investing. It's of disrupting a fragile, hard-won sense of safety. To protect ourselves from these fears, we don't just avoid action. We build narratives, internal stories that justify standing still, transforming apprehension into wisdom. I'm just being responsible, we might say. Or, I'll start when I have more to invest. These aren't excuses in the conscious sense. They are psychological shields, and they feel utterly true. One of the most common stories is the myth of perfect timing. We tell ourselves that now is not the right moment. The market is too high, too volatile, too uncertain. We'll wait for a dip, for clarity, for a sign. This story is seductive because it contains a kernel of logical truth. Timing matters, but it's weaponized by fear to justify perpetual inaction. There will always be a reason to wait. The goal of this story isn't to find the perfect moment. It's to avoid any moment at all. It keeps us safely on the sidelines, watching the game, convincing ourselves we're smart for not playing. Another powerful narrative is identity. I'm not an investor. That's for other people. People who are risk-takers, who understand finance. We box ourselves into a category of someone who protects money, not someone who deploys it. This identity feels safe. It absolves us of the responsibility and the potential regret. If you're not an investor, you can't make an investing mistake. Your only job is to guard the vault. This story is often reinforced by our environment. Family who preached caution, friends who share the same apprehensions. We surround ourselves with echoes of our own narrative. Then there's the story of the catastrophic loss. The mind doesn't picture a modest, temporary downturn. It conjures a total wipeout, losing everything, going back to zero. This story is so vivid, so emotionally charged, that it overshadows the more probable, mundane reality of long-term growth through volatility. We react to the horror movie our brain has produced, not the historical dataset. The story isn't about statistics, it's about survival. And in a survival scenario, you don't take chances. You hunker down. These stories are reinforced by a subtle daily reward, the absence of anxiety. When you decide not to invest today, you are immediately rewarded with relief. The knot in your stomach loosens. You close the browser tab and the tension dissipates. This negative reinforcement is incredibly powerful. You've just solved your anxiety by avoiding its source. The long-term cost is invisible, a theoretical future. The short-term reward is palpable and immediate. So the behavior is cemented. Not investing becomes the solution to the feeling of fear. The tragedy is that these stories are often born from legitimate pain or prudent caution, but they become rigid, trapping us in a version of safety that is, itself, a form of loss. We confuse the feeling of security with actual security. The story says, you are safe because nothing is moving. Reality whispers, you are slowly losing ground because nothing is moving. But the story is louder, more comforting, and it plays on a loop, defending the status quo with the fierce loyalty of a protector. Recognizing these fears and stories is the first step. The next is the delicate work of changing your relationship with money and risk, not through force, but through understanding. This isn't about becoming a reckless gambler, it's about moving from a mindset of pure protection to one of cautious growth, from seeing money only as a shield to also seeing it as a tool. It begins with reframing what safety means. True financial safety isn't a static number in an account being eroded by inflation. It's resilience. It's the ability to withstand shocks and grow over time. A diversified investment, even with its fluctuations, can build that kind of resilience. The safety of stillness is an illusion. It feels solid, but it's brittle over the long run. The safety of a managed, thoughtful plan can feel uncertain, but it's adaptive. The goal is to shift your emotional allegiance from the illusion to the adaptive model. A practical way to start is by redefining what a loss is. In the fearful mind, any dip in value is a loss, a confirmation of failure. But what if you defined loss differently? What if the only real loss is the permanent erosion of your purchasing power due to inaction? What if a market fluctuation is just noise, not a verdict? This cognitive shift is massive. It means separating the daily, weekly, or yearly movements from the final outcome you're actually working toward, which might be decades away. The dip isn't a catastrophe, it's an expected part of the landscape, like a bump in a long road. This leads to the power of tiny, almost imperceptible actions. You don't need to leap. You can sidestep the fear by making the first action trivial. This isn't about investing your life savings. It's about creating a new emotional experience with risk. Set up an automatic transfer of an amount so small you wouldn't notice if it vanished. The price of a coffee. Invest it in a broad, simple fund, then watch it. Not daily, but occasionally. Your goal here isn't profit. Your goal is acclimation. You're teaching your nervous system that this thing you feared, moving money into the market, can happen without the world ending. The money will go up and down, and you will be okay. You're building a memory of survival, a counter-narrative to the story of catastrophic loss. Another key is to focus on process, not outcomes. The fearful mind is obsessed with the result, the future balance. This creates immense pressure. Instead, focus on the process you can control. Setting up the automatic plan, choosing a sensible strategy, periodically reviewing it. When you invest in the process, the daily outcomes matter less. You're no longer a gambler watching the roulette wheel. You're a gardener tending a plot. Some days it rains, some days it's dry, but you trust the seasons. This transfers your sense of control from the uncontrollable, market prices, to the controllable, your habits and systems. It's a slow rewiring. You are challenging a deep-seated emotional reflex, often built over a lifetime. There will be discomfort. The old stories will try to reassert themselves, but with each small, successful exposure, the fear loses a little of its power. You begin to create a new story, one where you are not a passive guardian of a static hoard, but an active, thoughtful participant in building your own future. The money is no longer just a shield you stand behind. It becomes a resource you work with. The final barrier is never about finding the perfect fund or waiting for the ideal economic forecast. It's about the moment of translation, when knowledge becomes action and action feels like vulnerability. That moment is deeply personal. It's the internal click that matters more than the one on the screen. Consider what you're really protecting. Often it's not just the money. It's a version of yourself that is cautious, careful, and free from the sting of regret. To invest feels like betraying that careful self. But what if that careful self is also holding you back from a future self that is more secure, more resilient, and free from the quiet anxiety of watching your safety net slowly fray? This isn't about discarding caution. It's about evolving it, transforming it from a wall that keeps everything out into a filter that lets opportunity in while managing risk. The peace found in stillness is real, but it's a finite peace. It's the peace of a closed room. Eventually, you'll need to step outside. The peace found on the other side of fear is different. It's the peace of agency. It's knowing you faced the uncertainty, made a plan, and are navigating it. It's accepting that total control was always an illusion and choosing intelligent influence instead. This peace is dynamic. It can coexist with fluctuation because it's rooted in your own actions, not in the stillness of an account balance. So, how do you make that internal click? You acknowledge the fear. You name it. This feels like I'm giving up control. I'm terrified of seeing a loss and feeling like a fool. Then, you deliberately choose to act in spite of it, not because it has vanished. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward with the fear in the passenger seat, not driving the car. Your first investment isn't a financial transaction first. It's a psychological one. You are voting for a new story about who you are and what you're capable of enduring. Start by defining what enough looks like for you. Enough research. Enough savings in your emergency fund to feel solid. Enough in your checking account to sleep at night. Whatever is left, that's the frontier. That's the part you can practice with. And remember, the goal of the first step isn't wealth. The goal is evidence. Evidence for your own nervous system that you can do this and survive. That the dreaded regret, if it comes, is a feeling you can handle. That a market dip is an event, not an identity. This journey from fear to engagement is one of the most honest financial paths you can walk. It requires confronting not spreadsheets but your own history your stories, and your deepest needs for safety. If this reflection has resonated with you or sparked a thought about your own relationship with money, consider subscribing. This channel is built on exploring these nuanced human aspects of our choices, and your perspective is a valuable part of that. Turning on notifications means you won't miss our future explorations into the psychology behind the decisions we make every day. In the end, the money that grows is not just the money you invested. It's your confidence, your understanding of risk, and your capacity to build a future that isn't just safe, but also alive with potential. The first step is the hardest, because it's the only one you have to take entirely on faith. Every step after that, you'll have the evidence of your own courage to guide you,